Hello everyone, welcome to another live hangout here at Voice Essentials. I hope you're all having a fabulous weekend. I know many of you are coming to the end of your weekend. We are well into the week here in Australia. Monday it's already half over. The start of my day has been pretty good. I've seen a number of students. One of my international students, a guy from California. I love it when students bring really left of field songs along. Anyway, he brought along a Korean song, a ballad, and we got to work on that together. I really enjoyed that. It made my day. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Dan. I am a contemporary singing voice specialist, and I've been doing this for quite a bit of time. And today what we're going to do is answer your questions regarding singing. At least we're going to do that to the best of my ability. I don't know everything there is to know about singing. Gee, I wish I did, but I don't. But over the years I've collected a good amount of info, and I'm sure we'll be able to answer many of your questions as we do here. Very often we do these live shows. If you're new, we do these live shows every Monday Australian Eastern Standard Time at 1 p.m. Now often we do these Q&As where you ask the questions and I do my best to provide the answers. But we also have guests come on the show. So last week we had Kath Williams. Wasn't she fantastic? Those of you who caught the show. Such a passion and a really great depth of knowledge excuse me, about the human voice. And so it was really great to have Kath on, and we'll hopefully have her on again in the future. And in coming weeks, we've got Dr. Georgina Harris coming on. Now, Dr. Harris is a laryngologist. I'm just a little bit giddy with excitement about having Dr. Harris come onto the show. She's a laryngologist from Sydney, and she's going to be coming on, and I'm going to talk with her about vocal health issues. Now, she's coming on the 24th of August, all things being equal, and she doesn't get called into, an unexpected surgery or something. So we are super fortunate to having someone of Dr. Harris's level of expertise and experience coming to talk with us as a community about issues of vocal health. We're going to be talking about things like nodules and cysts, and we're going to really unpack that whole area through the lens of a voice surgeon. So that, I can't wait. That is going to be so cool to do. You may recall a few weeks back we had Zach Bradford. Now, he's a friend of mine who teaches here in Brisbane, Australia. He came onto the show, and two names kept coming up during that show. One was Brian Gill, and one Dr. Brian Gill, and the other one was Dr. Joan Melton. Well, I've reached out to both of them. We've had Brian on the show before. I'm waiting to hear back from him. But I've also reached out to Joan Melton. I'm really glad to be able to report to you, Joan is going to be coming onto the show. We haven't set a date yet, but it is going to be before the end of the year. And she was super keen to come and join us. She is a very active researcher around voice, and also into the implications of movement and acting and those sorts of things, music theatre. Gee, we have such top-rate people come onto this show. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the white bell icon, because you don't want to miss these special guests. These are some of the leading people in the world around the area of voice. In fact, today on Facebook, I saw someone sharing that they were doing not dissimilar things to what we do as a part of the show, and very understandably, their interviews, and their chats were behind a paywall. They were behind you had to pay to go and listen to this. Our guests come on and they give it for free. I don't put this behind a paywall. All you need to do is just make sure you subscribe, hit the white bell icon so you never miss a session, and you will have access to some of the best information available today on voice. These people are just so outstanding. Also, Dr. Marcy Daniels Rosenberg, co-author of The Vocal Athlete. She's been on the show before, but she's also said that she'll come back onto the show for the 19th of October is when she's coming on. Oh, how about finishing the year strong? So excited. I'm quite pumped, actually. Quite pumped, partly because, hey, I wanted to let you know, did you know this, just in the last week, so literally just in the last week, this channel, Voice Essentials, we hit 10 million views. Now, you know what? I've shared that with a couple of people. Yes, because I'm quite proud of that. I'm quite proud of us as a community. But they've gone, wow. And you know, when people have responded to, I've gone, actually, yeah, 10 million views. That's a lot, right? And can I just say thank you to all of you who regularly watch the show, who regularly engage with my pre-record videos. We of course had one of those go live last week, and you know, every view counts, and it counts because what happens is when we view the videos, when we engage with the videos, it sends signals to the algorithm of YouTube, or the multiple algorithms of YouTube, to say that the what's going on here at Voice Essentials is highly valued by the community, and as a result, more people get to see the information. And I know the information is being so helpful to so many of you. So thank you so much. Humbly, thank you for your support. I can actually remember reaching 10,000 views, and I was excited. So 10 million, wow. So there you go. That happened in the last week. What hasn't happened in the last week is I still haven't heard from any of you regarding the live song reviews. So for those of you who don't watch the channel regularly, these live shows, we generally often have guests, some of the best guests in the world. We do these live Q&As, which we're going to get to your questions in a second. And I like to, in fact, one of my favorite things to do is to do the live song reviews. But to participate in the live song review, you have to be an enrolled, paying member of the Voice Essentials online course, and you have to send me an email putting your hand up to say, hey, I want to participate, and then I can send you some more information, whatever. I would love to have someone put their hand up. This is essentially a free singing lesson. Now, my singing lessons are $125 Australian, $125 per session. You will get that for absolute free if you put your hand up, and we can have you tick all the criteria, what have you. But look, I would love you to be involved if you want to. Let's hopefully get at least one more song review done before the end of the year. Dear me, it'd be nice to think we get a few more than just one. But right now, I'm just happy to have one of you come on. It's fun. It's encouraging. You learn something. Kathy, Linda, Kelly, so many people have had such positive results from doing the live song reviews. Why we're having problems with internet. Okay. I'm hoping that we can get ourselves back up and running here. Stay with me, everyone. And I think we're going to get ourselves back up and going. Linda, if you can just let me know via text that we're actually back up and running and we're going okay. I think we're going okay. We're back. Okay. Sorry about that, everyone. For some reason, our internet is playing up a little bit, and I had to sort of do the quick dance to get ourselves back on track. So hopefully, I'll just leave that up there for a second. And yeah, sometimes that's what happens when you go live. We have all sorts of crazy things. So where we're up to, talking about live song reviews, and I think I'm just going to move on because I think we want to probably get to some questions after all of that hubba bubba. Oh dear, the things we do. Let's go to the Q&A. We all want to get to that. Let's do that now. Okay, just going to make sure that our music is off. Still saying that we've got poor stream health, so I'm not certain what's going on there, but anywho, I'm going to come down here and I'm just going to come over to the questions. Now, I do remember in our last show, we had a couple of super chats that came through that I didn't get a chance to actually answer, as well as one from the week even before that. So let me go through them. Protestant Pope put up an auto chat. It was sort of a question. Auto tuning. Oh, I'm just seeing a message from Linda. Linda is our moderator, everyone. If you don't know Linda, she's keeping an eye on everything in the chat for me. If you've got questions, ask your questions live in the chat. Linda takes them down and writes them down for me, including super chats, which we give priority to. Sometimes we just don't get even to all of the super chats, which I'm doing now. Protestant Pope, thank you for your super chat a few weeks back. Your question was, auto-tuning is standard today because it's perfects pitch 100%. Is robotic perfection desirable because there is a charm to few little artistic organic flaws at professional level? And then you've made the point, Remaster Whitney, The Carpenters, Sinatra, albums with auto-tune, Imagine the Uproar. Well, actually, the interesting thing about that, Protestant Pope, is there was actually auto-tune before there was the product called auto-tune. And they did it in a really long-handed way where they would cut and splice and sometimes speed the tape up by milliseconds and slow it down, and that would change the pitch, and that would actually tune the voices. So I think it's important that we understand that auto-tune is not something that's only been happening digitally since the 90s. The advent of digital auto-tune has certainly made it so much more prevalent. And the point to be made around that is, for example, I used auto-tune on my own album, which I recorded way back in 2006, which incidentally is available for free to download from my Djarts website. That aside, so it's not that auto-tune is a bad thing. You know, when you're in a studio recording, time literally is money. The longer you spend in the studio, the more costly it's going to be. This is when we're working in, you know, really expensive studio spaces. And so to cut back on that amount of dollar, we go looking for handy shortcuts. And one of those handy shortcuts can be to go, oh, really, we captured the emotion of that line there that you've just sung. That's fantastic. But it's a little flat. Can we, should we go back and do it? No, let's keep the emotion of what we've put in there because we love that, and we'll just tune it a little. And because the reality is you could go back, do it again, and get the tuning spot on, but you might not get the emotion that time. The one thing you can't add into music is emotion, but what you can add into music is tuning. And so, we often apply tuning there. So when we think about the groups like people like Whitney and the Carpenters and Sinatra, I don't know that we can categorically say that there is no tuning going on. So that's important to know. But personally, and we've talked a bit about this on the channel before, personally, I do love albums where there is little to no tuning, where actually the value of the recording to me that I'm hearing is the fact that it's raw, is the fact that it's unrefined and undoctored. And sometimes that can leave in place more emotion because it's more organic. It has a raw authenticity to it that sometimes we don't hear if the voice has been fully tuned, because it does put that really shiny polish over the top of something. Now, it comes down to context. I've got a video that I did a number of years back that's here on the channel where I kind of pointed out some things about a particular recording by Pentatonics, who I love, who I think are fantastic, because they are fantastic. These are talented people. But this particular track had been tuned, and I've since learnt, produced in a way that just left it feeling very plastic. And I felt it was a tragedy that had taken place, because they're better than that in one sense. Yeah. So, and I made some commentary around that. Now, the context when we're putting stuff onto certainly a global stage, there is a certain requirement for the voice to be, really well tuned. But I wonder how much of that is nurture versus nature. How much of that is us having created an environment in which people now actually expect perfect tuning, and can no longer, cope with hearing inaccurate notes. It grates on their ears simply because they haven't been exposed to real, authentic music. I don't know. That's open for speculation. So there you go, Protestant. I hope that's helpful to hear my response to that. Turquoise skies, before we get into, I can see Matt's given us a super chat. Thanks, Matt. We'll get to your question in a moment. Turquoise skies. Hi, Dr. Dan. I sang in 3 places and people said I had a powerful voice, but other people said the speakers were not good enough for my voice. Does that mean I can't sing, or was it really the speakers or the mic? Turquoise skies, I've been in a not dissimilar position. And in fact, I remember quoting to do a gig. I actually went out and did a site recon with this particular client. They were holding a particular event in a particular venue. And when I got to the venue, because this is sort of like it was sort of a friend of a friend, so I said I'd go out and look at the venue with them as far as the PA goes and what have you. And when we got to the venue, I said, where's the PA? And the venue proprietor said, we use the line speakers. Now, line speakers are often that flat disc that you'll see mounted in and recessed into the ceiling. We see line speakers being used in most shopping centres, in places like that. And where they're piping the music, you know, that's very elevator type music. And so generally the levels are very low, and often, I don't know if this is exactly right, but they're often referred to as 100 watt line speakers. So they can't take a lot of load. And so they were going to, now they can cope with just having someone on a roving microphone doing speeches, say for example like at weddings where the groom gets up and the father of the bride gets up and blah blah, and they say their speeches. Those line speakers can typically take the spoken voice and do a relatively good job at amplifying those. But what line speakers generally can't do is handle a trained voice that is going to get up and give it some. And in this particular instance, that was what I was going to be required to do. After a bit of to and fro, and I said, look, to both my client and the proprietor, I said, look, I really don't think it's a good idea for me to sing through these. Typically, it's going to be what really, you know, it's going to just sound distorted, and I end up overloading the line speakers. And they sort of looked at me as if I was talking double Dutch. That's partly my fault. Maybe I didn't do a good enough job in explaining it. Long story short, they decided to proceed with me singing on the line speakers for this particular gig. Guess what happens? Not only was my performance so it was completely distorted, even with me trying to pull the mic off so that I wasn't over driving the mic. Not only was that the case, but I actually blew a couple of the lines. Well, certainly somehow that's what happened to the system, and they had to I heard they had to replace a couple of the speakers. And so, you know, in one sense, I sounded terrible through those line speakers. That was not because I couldn't sing. That was because the line speakers couldn't handle the task. There was a disconnect between what I was requiring of them and what they could supply. Back to your question, Turquoise Skies. So it's not that when people say that the speakers couldn't handle your singing that you can't sing. It simply could be that maybe, and you haven't outlined in your question, it may be simply that the speakers just weren't able to cope with what you were giving them. And you've also asked whether it could be the mic. Yes, it actually could be the mic. If you're singing into a really cheap wireless, often, same context, if you're often in that sort of line speaker environment where the room's just really, the speaker system's only built to sort of make, you know, spoken announcements or little speeches, then often those really cheap handheld wireless mics are just really bad for singing. They cope with the spoken sound, but for singing they're not great. So anyway, that can all lead to you having the problems that you've encountered there. Okay, let's move on. Now, as I said, Matt's given us a super chat, and Matt's asked, do low... Oh, Matt, you just make me smile. You really do. If you're new to the show, Matt pretty much 95% of the time asks questions about low voice, and I'm just smiling. There's nothing wrong with that, Matt. There is nothing wrong with that at all. It's just that, you know, I didn't get 2 words into your super chat question, and the second word I see is low, and I already know where we're going with this. Do low voices tend to resonate more than high voices, and can you explain resonance in relationship to the voice? No, low voices do not resonate more than high voices. If we're resonance is the manner in which resonance is not only dependent on the source, but it's also dependent on the cavity in which the source is going into. Firstly, in the case of the human voice, your unique vocal tract is the first resonant space, cavity, that the sound will resonate into. Yeah, so that filter, that changes the sound in such a unique way that we've talked about here before, and your voice therefore is shaped even before it gets into, in this case, my studio, or if we're in a cathedral, how it would sound in that. If we're in a cave, how it would sound in that. If we were in a wind tunnel, how it would sound. These would all be different resonant spaces with different acoustic qualities, which would then transform the sound in accordance with that. And so some resonant spaces will resonate better with low frequencies. Some spaces will resonate better with higher frequencies or mid frequencies. And so, it's really dependent on the space as to what the resonant quality will be, and how that relationship works. So no, we don't get to give any particular voice a prize for better, worse, or indifferent. And then you've asked, can you explain resonance in relationship to the voice? Well, I think I might have just done that. It's really got to do with this vocal tract. And this is why we work so hard, especially in the Voice Essentials online course. We work so hard in developing the vocal tract, your ability to shape and manipulate and mold the vocal tract in order to have good control over the resonance space and how that all works. Not to mention things like articulation and tension management and la-di-da-di-da. Okay, jumping down here to Unearthly Mouse 3. Unearthly Mouse 3. When I'm singing, I'm not laughing at you, Unearthly Mouse. I'm laughing at your. Well, I'm not laughing at. I'm enjoying your handle, your YouTube handle. When I'm singing high, I've been getting this feeling of light pressure in my head that kind of hurts and almost feels like something's going to pop. Could this be bad air support, and how do I get rid of it? It almost certainly, you're saying bad air support. Unearthly Mouse, that it is likely, though I can't be too categoric, because at the end of the day, I would have to hear you sing and watch you do what you do to really give you very specific instruction. But it does sound like you're overdriving your sound. Now, as it would turn out, the pre-record that went live last week talks about the difference between energy and effort. And the challenge of good singing is to maintain really good energy, consistent energy, but to reduce the effort. And that's the kicker right there. That's quite challenging to achieve. And so I'd encourage you to go and have a look at that video. If you go to the videos tab on the channel, it literally will be the first or second video on there. And I'd encourage you to go and have a look at that. Lucas Fisher, does Dr. Dan have any favourite jazz singers? Lucas, I don't. My undergrad, my bachelor's degree is in jazz voice, much to the chagrin of my instructors at the time, because I am by no means a jazz singer at all. But I did enough to get by. I love, there's a number of people that I do enjoy listening to. I really, especially during my jazz degree, which was back in the 90s, I really enjoyed listening to ones like Mel Torme. I particularly enjoyed Diana Krall, and I'm not talking about Diana Krall's more kind of pop stuff, but actually her sort of hard-angled jazz stuff. I love groups like Jamiroquai, and you could be quite rightly say, well, they're not jazz. No, they're not, but they're kind of a jazz funk fusion kind of thing, I guess. Yeah, and I love Sting. Now, Sting also is not hardcore jazz, but there's a lot of jazz elements going on there, so that's kind of the sort of people I enjoy listening to, Lucas. Awful workplaces. That's the name of the person who's asked the question. Awful workplaces. What can you do for dry air, and what is the best method to build vocals, lows, mids, highs up? The best thing you can do for dry air is to rehumidify the air. You can get vaporizers that will do that. One of the best things you can do, especially if you are in a very dry space, is to put a vaporizer on while you sleep. It does wonders for your voice because it means you're breathing far more moist air during the evening while you sleep, and that's something really positive to do. And then you've asked, what is the best method to build vocals, lows, mids, highs, ups? That's basically what is. You've just asked the question, what is the best method to build vocals? Because you've used all of them, all of the lows, mids, highs, up. I would encourage. Do you know what? Sometimes I'm not bold enough to say the best thing you can do is to actually either get private singing lessons with someone like myself or someone close to you that you can trust, or enroll in my live in my online singing course, which is coming along the bottom there, the link. Seriously, in fact, I've got some testimonial videos that are not quite ready to be, put out into the public sphere yet. In the next couple of weeks, they will be. But I invited a range of people, both my private singing students and people who have completed the Voice Essentials online course, to send in some testimonial videos. I was thrilled and humbled by the comments that came back from all over the world, from people just like you, Awful Workplaces, to say how helpful the online course has been to their vocal development. And so I'd encourage you to check it out. I'm often not, I'm told, I've had a few people say, Daniel, you've got to be a bit more bold in telling people how good this course is. It's a bit hard to do when you're the person that put it together, but anyway, I'd encourage you to check it out. It's helped a lot of people, and hopefully it can help you as well. Hernando Ibarak, Dr. Dan, is a fact that for a correct technique, your singing voice must sound so similar to your speaking voice. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. No, it's not a prereq. There is many of you will have heard of speech level singing, SLS. It's a methodology that was first created by Seth Riggs back in, I think it's back as early as the 70s, but it really came into its own in the 80s and the 90s. SLS, which has, it must be said, has been sort of, let's just diplomatically say it's been replicated by a number of well-known singing teachers online. And certainly, for them, it forms the foundation of their pedagogy. The problem, and I don't think if we were to ask Mr. Seth Riggs himself whether to sing well the voice must always be in a speech level position, I don't think he would say that it would be. Nonetheless, SLS, speech level singing, kind of leaves us with the impression that that would be the case. The reality is your larynx needs to move. It needs to be like a buoy, B-U-O-Y, on the sea. It comes up with certain swells and it goes down with certain swells. At the end of the day, your singing is different to your talking. it's using all the same bits, but it's exactly as running is to walking, singing is to talking. And that's why it's really important that you are able to talk well in an efficient, sustainable, healthy manner before you sing well. Because if you're going to run well, you're first going to need to be able to walk well. And I don't know if you've ever seen a running coach working with their student or the athlete that they're working with. You'll see them actually stepping out their gait. They're not running, they're kind of going at walking pace, and they're getting their gait, their movement, their synergy of musculature and skeletal structure working in a really synergetic before they then heighten the activity and the energy around going from that walking movement into the running. It is so similar with singing. You want to be able to walk well, talk well, before you heighten the energy around the singing, and that's really important. So they, in one sense, they're the same, but in another sense, they are quite different, and they, at the end of the day, they are different tasks that work with the acoustics and the musculature and the balances of that musculature in quite different ways. Claudia Rolando. Hello, thank you for this lesson. You're welcome, Claudia. I watched your registers video and I found it very interesting. I would like to know how articulation affects the register categories. Thank you. Well, articulation is in a sense the way we process the sound that our voice is being made into identifiable forms, which our hearing is then able to interpret and translate into something that we can perceive as language. And that's the importance of articulation. As far as how it affects your register categories, well, what it does do is it creates starts and stops in many respects as sound is flowing forward. As air is flowing forward, we are getting a start-stop very quickly. This is all happening very quickly, even as I'm talking now. Some of my consonants are breaking the air pattern up and the airflow so that we're getting these short stops and starts. That does have a non-linear effect back on the flow of air back to the vocal folds, and so there is some impact from that, and it can have an impact if we find ourselves being quite laryngeally focused, where the vocal folds are kind of doing some of that work at a glottal level. The glottis is the space directly between the vocal folds, and the glottal line is an imaginary line that runs between the vocal folds. And if I'm starting to use my vocal folds in a incorrect manner or an imbalanced manner to create some of those start stops, then we can find ourselves in a scenario where the voice is going to really get quite tired and fatigue rather quickly. Hope that helps, Claudia. Wolf Gaming presents, I'm a tenor, but my falsetto is maxed at D sharp 5. Is that high? Well, it's not low. Wolf Gaming, here at Voice Essentials, I don't get too caught up in what is high and what is low. In fact, I stopped answering people's questions on the channel, particularly on one of my videos, where people are always asking whether the particular note that they're able to sing is high or not. For that voice, it may be exceptionally high. If you're a bass like Matt and low voice is your thing, then singing a D sharp 5 is like stratospheric. It's very high. If you're a tenor, like myself, then it may still be high, but it may not be as high as if you were Matt as a bass. So, I don't think you've got to get too concerned in workshopping your falsetto, and there's some great work in Voice Essentials 3 on this particular topic. Always workshop your voice to where it feels comfortable, plus 1 or 2. And so you're always extending, requiring the voice to extend without, putting it at danger of overdoing it. Amy, and we've only got time for a couple more questions. So if you absolutely need your question answered, you are going to need to put it in as a super chat, because we've got like 10 more questions, which I'm definitely not going to get to. But I will have time for one super chat after I answer Amy's question. Hey sir, how long does it take to become a great singer? I should have read that question before I said after we answer Amy's, because it's Amy, it is kind of a how long is a piece of string. What will take one person 12 months to establish a really solid foundational technique can take another person 3 years. There's no rhyme or rhythm to it. There are so many factors that go into that. But what I do know, Amy, is that, even when I get professional level singers who come into my studio to work and they ask me to work with them, more often than not, not always, but more often than not, even though they are experienced singers, experienced performers, often they are beginners when it comes to vocal technique. And so one of the challenges for those types of singers is to kind of, in a sense, place the aesthetic value, the performance values that they're already very good at, kind of shelve those for a period of time while we build the technique up underneath the what is what everyone else sees, and that can be challenging because it does take time. It's not a fast road, it's a slow road. But people who choose to travel the long road, typically get the benefit of the long road, and that is a more resilient voice, a more accurate voice, a more confident voice, a healthier voice, a voice that repairs quicker after use. The fatigue rates are lower, the stamina is longer. There are so many benefits to developing great technique, and so Amy, I would encourage you, it is never too late to start that journey of vocal technique. And I'd encourage you to have a look at the Voice Essentials online course if you haven't already done so. But it'll step you through step by step in developing that great technique. And then I would also encourage you to add to that, to enhance that, to work with a really good singing teacher who can step alongside you and guide you along a learning pathway. That's all we've got time for today, folks. I hope you've enjoyed today's Hangout. We had that technical thing happen at the beginning. I don't know what happened there, because my internet, I'm looking at my internet and it's all fine, and I was able to flick across to my mobile device, and that's a good contingency, but yeah, who knows? It was a bit bizarre, but there you go. If you've enjoyed today's show, hit the thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the white bell icon, because I love to have you join us every Monday at Australian Eastern Standard Time at 1 p.m. We will do this again next week. We're going to do another Q&A next week, and then the week after that, we're going to have Dr. Harris join us, and it will be so good to have her come on to the show, because she really, really knows her stuff, and you are going to learn so much from having the time spent with her when she comes on. But for now, a special thanks once again to the fantastic Linda, who's been taking your questions. Sorry, Linda, there's so many questions today, we just didn't get to them all. That's often the case, isn't it, these days? Yeah, I hope you all have a great week, and I will see you all again soon, when you'll always hear me say, I'm Dr. Dan, sing well.